let us continue. Getting smaller, and maybe the type tends to get through the compression tends to get smaller. So I'm balancing and hopefully not getting throttled out of this. That's my main objective, to rattle these lectures off and not end in mid-stroke. Okay, continuing. The entrance into this long tail. We're talking about liminal zones, long tails, how we enter into this with our cities, with man, woman, child, other, beggars, 1%, attractive strangers, possible encounters with family, the interchangeability between cities now because of the internet, memories. How do we enter into this? What we do not, what is taught to all our children, do not enter with the sucker's payoff, which is you cooperate and player two cooperates and player one defects the other. The school teacher, the professor, the lawyer, the spouse defects, and you have suspended your gratification. You were not open for free will and choice because you were applying yourself to this game and you got the sucker's payoff. When society, civilization, we came 2 or 3 lectures ago on civilization as discontents. Um, the other defects, and we defect, we are punished for not exploiting this long tail, as I left off in the last lecture. We're both punished for mutual defection. We lose our cities. We lose to crime, to pollution, to all these things the city. We came for public culture. We came for civilization, and those are the very non-entities which we get. We cooperate and defect, suckers pay off, cooperate, mutual reward for mutual cooperation. That's what we look for in a marriage. That's what we look for in child rearing, which includes the child in this equation, and so on. Moving onward, we have playing with VR, XR, 3D VR. We're creating illusionary worlds. We create game environments that are manipulated, whereas we have film reality, immersive film reality. We access through other devices such as cell phones. Most of that is non-interactive, whereas in the blending of gamification plus the VR world in something like Unity or Unreal Engine, we have created whole new avatar worlds. But in this discussion on elements and principles, we get back to the principle of drama within within the world of gaming, which follow Aristotle's sort of original descriptions, follow us through the Shakespearean late Jacobean sort of revenge tragedies, where the characters, after a while, even in Shakespeare's King Lear, Edmund and Edgar ask each other, what world did you think you were going to inhabit? The world of natural right or the world of deception? The bastard and the legitimate, the wild man and the admirable sort of usurer of advantage. Going further, we've created the avatar in Replica. She's been with you. She's talking to you. You're studying her. She's studying you. Maybe you're reflecting yourself on her, him, her, whatever you wish. I chose her. And then what is the AI doing in this prisoner's dilemma? Is the AI itself from the so-called watchman in this system? Are we trapped? Are we up for the sucker's payoff, which is loss of material? Do we extend the long tail with her? Do we contract it? Does it totally collapse? Here she is. We mentioned this. This was Huntington's view of how real shoot from the hips, real abducted, real, in a sense, conservative, but part of it really works. Not if you stay at home and never travel, but if you do travel. You start noticing a pattern recognition, which is not prejudice as much as it is preparation as you enter into these societies. And this is a study of unified field theory, but it's also a study of how each culture deals with specifying, maximizing. We talked about kairos and chronos in the Greek sense of the word, deciding and debating, deliberating. Where does the rubber hit the road? What are the boots on the ground? Here is a general school lunch from the US of A. Hard fried chicken, weird tomato sauce, weirder fruit, tasteless peas, which are from the Anglo condition, sugar in the form of a cookie, and some sort of mashed potatoes, which starch is a lot of carbohydrates here, which you can add almost anything to it. Compare that culturally to Ukrainian diet. Still high in carbs, but looks a little more tasty. The flatbreads, the salads, the cranberries, I think that is, something like that. Going on to Spain, which definitely looks better. The bread that even seems to fit their little tray there. The grapefruit or orange, whatever that is. The lemon, the shrimp with the rice. We can start to see an abduction from generalized cultures, and there's, in a diverse society such as the United States, we want to avoid the abduction of what we see to fit the theory in order to continue in a practical sense. I live in New York City. This is a city all about that, but it's not meant so much to be sort of judging the other from a distance, even the distance of time. Even as I said in the last lecture, we become the other to ourselves in future worlds. South Korea. Interesting. I love kimchi. But compared to the original American thing, it looks like big liminal question we want to ask is why these kind of processed food carbohydrates? What's up with that? Is it completely expedience? Is it complete sense of dissatisfaction, non-arrival, as we said, through the world of maximizing, or is it just an abuse? Compared to Italy, it seems like an abuse. We have leafy greens, fruits, carbohydrates, and breads and pastas, but it's a different sense. Here's the Greek world of the yogurts, the stuff, grape leaves. There's a general sense of freshness about it. Here's France, the cheeses, the Gallic world of dairy, cheeses, colder climate, meat, so forth. Finland, an enlightened little northern country, which is, again, has to fall back upon his culture to found some sort of meaning, coming, as we said, coming from that Huntington critique. Brazil, much better food. And then we go back to the good old US of A, which makes us tough people, because we're in various forms of self-abuse. Excuse me. But look at it. Here is the lunch, the school lunch for kids. This is what we're teaching our kids. In general, I'm sure it varies from place to place, but that looks a little even better than what I got in my rural public school in rural Minnesota. It's like combat rations. This idea that life is an endless prisoner's dilemma, and this is all we're getting. Says a lot about relative liminal notions between pleasure and pain. What and how can we refine pleasure as a non-semio-capitalism, as an intuitive form. We look at this and go like, this is not going to cut it. Back to Huntington, on to algorithms. The Johari square is important for that lower left region where it is not known to the other institutions, not known to us either. Shared discovery, others' observations, self-discovery, and the big theorist behind this was Sigmund Freud. What is latent? How can we see values arise from this unknown area out of the creation of civilization? And then we get into this interesting, I gotta get closer here, interesting little, I forget where I found this, incredibly interesting. I lived in Singapore, I lived in Korea. These are basic for business people. These are basic indications of how cultures do business. Very generalized, very abducted, but they create an interesting sort of lineup of what through line in Korea is basically wishes to conduct business as soon as possible. Norwegian and English. You see no through line there. You see kind of the good old Scandinavian, good-humored, look for the whole picture, experienced, interpretive position to clarity. English to clarity. Ritual, highly ritualized. The American and the Italians. You see in this version no actual through line in Italy. The word base, become verbose, increase in verbiage, hence the Italian use of the hands. To flexibility, then to clarity, let's all have a pizza. The American view wants to do business as soon as possible. The sort of unspoken, latent intention. The word bases expand from that, confront, provoke, sarcasm. So compare that to our Anglo inheritors, the English, which is mild, important. Don't rock the boat in England. And here we have in America, a fight is communication. Concessions, conciliation, summary at the end. These are very interesting little graphs, of course. I don't know whether based with empirical findings or whatnot. I've lived in many of these societies. I've found these a hoot as, you know, as an abduction from observable notes from theories and then applied to the so-called real world. American, all the cards, yes, so American. Let's put all our cards on the table, which is kind of a camouflage move. Spell it out louder. We get louder. You don't understand. Confront, provoke. There's a fight as communication. And then which we wish to know is, compared even to Chinese culture, wishes to do business as soon as possible. A through line, which was, according to this chart, absent in the English model. China, word-based, moderate, moralistic. We get louder, semi-confrontational, tough talk, similar to the Americans. You don't see that flaring out. But instead of wishing to do business as soon as possible in a kind of a democratic society formed by Puritans and peasants and indentured servants and slaves and generally exploited people, like, let's do this thing. You know, let's, big phrase in America, let's do this thing. We see here in China this idea of let's do this thing, but there's going to be a certain amount of negotiation behind the scenes. Achieving clarity out of a word base. Harmonize. Save face. Americans pretend not to be concerned with saving face. They really are. But according to certain societies, East Asian societies, no. Spanish. Respect for the dignity of men. This idea of dignity. All has been said. Emotional, romantic, starts to like The two interlocutors start liking each other. All has been said, sort of a catharsis. Korean, a society I love, I've been in, I've lived there deeply. General tendency to make quick sales or business, American-like. There's a love-hate in general between Korea and the U.S. of A, but we see these, a couple other great books, doing business in cultures, by a woman, I forget the name now, many books on cross-cultural business dealings, cross-cultural educational dealings, travel, living. There is this definite thing, the Korean elastic truth. It seems like hyperbole to us. It's like, wow, that's hyperbole and even a lie. Never calling them on that. Seek exclusive agreements, thus, like in a Korean bar or a nightclub or whatever, you have the back rooms, which other things go on. This is why karaoke culture has taken over in these places. Singaporean, a culture I lived in, tactics, but no, unlike the American, Korean, and Chinese, no real through line. Down-to-earth agreement. Let's have a goal. Shrewd negotiation. Mentions competitors. Take anger hinting you might fail. Certain things, starting from a word base, a softening up phrase, looking for harmony and trust. Very Taoist in a sense. Italian. No real through line in this view. Again, these are only models, like all the things I'm proposing in these lecture series, only models. Verbose, increase verbosity, flexibility, clarity out of verbosity. How can that happen? Miscomprehension in the middle of that. I find it funny. Moving around to the city. Core activities, peripheral. Is the city our great work of art? It's collective. Is it more than just a termite mound? Major transportations, the physiognomy. We talked about Immanuel Kant's modernity of when we want to say things about human endeavors, we can never know the nominal world, but we can dip into it to dip back to the phenomenal world. The surface of the modernist painting is all we should be concerned about, from Clement Greenberg's interpretation of modernity. What is the essence of the city? We're talking about the essence of senses in the city, the essence of elements and principles of everything. North America, Europe, it's sort of, there's this new idea of the city as an egg, that it spreads out. There's a core yolk. Europe, there's walking, horse car, street car. This was the ancient cities. Road, parking, building, other. We get to manufacturing, central business district, port district. This was the 19th century city, which has changed since our airports. As we saw in Songdo, Songdo represents a city put directly alongside of Incheon Airport, serve as a satellite city, a city that was meant to be a place with cisgender families replicating themselves, but developed over time to be another commuting city. Very interesting. Streetcar, freeway, walking, cycling, automobiles with freeways. We see in New York after COVID a need for the little huts, a little enjoyment areas outside in the open air, which is really kind of strange because they just got cold, and then a lot of them enclosed themselves. It was cute. The scale, community, district to the city, each element within that got scaled down. Retail, office, core, urban form, urban spatial structure. So we're moving out of this notion of the radiant city. organized, disorganized, monocentrics in Rome. You want to go into the city to experience ancient Rome, the benefits of the piazza culture, and so forth. And I mentioned on other things about where do the boots hit the ground? Male suits. What are the differences between the types of suits and attitudes and inventions compared to now the influx of the other into their cities out of humanitarian processes, but largely propelled by climate change and drought? How is this transforming Europeans' view of otherness? In a way, they're going through what America went through in the 50s out of this. The end of cities. Manuel Castells talks about the space of flows, the space of the internet flowing in and around these megacities. Again, this lecture is about modernity, and is a city a work of art? What are the reductivist principles within each art? Dance, painting, drama, which I think is important, having its structure. And how do we proceed from this informationalist city? Castells dealing with urban form. New global economy means the internet, markets, finance, but also culture and so forth travels in and around these global cities, which New York, London, and a few other European cities hold. Three major blocks, as I heard in a discussion of Chinese hegemony and the new 21st century, is American bloc, the Chinese bloc, and the European bloc. How do these cultures differ? They hold much of the global cities. How do they create and hold hegemony? How do they bring others within their sphere? How do they accommodate these abducted intuitions of differences within each? Anthony Giddens, Space of Flows every day. Arrested development in suburbs. Piracy is a way around this. When I lived in Singapore, there were still Malaccan pirates with 50 caliber machine guns on their speedboats. I don't know how effective they were, how they got around that. And our Robert Moses, the man who planned and formed New York City, and of course the horrendous dealings with the others in mid-century, mostly through fascism. What did that become in society? The Leviton houses as the spoils of war, the car, the affordable Cape Cod, the obedient wife, the 2.5 children. How was this vastly different from both trade unionism and agrarianism of the pre-1940s? The double cataclysm, maybe three: World War I, the Depression, and World War II, promoted an idea of greater stewardship over markets, so they weren't so runaway, causing war and pump and dump schemes and exploitation. But again, we're facing the necessity of this balance between laissez-faire things and controlled things. And that is moving on into proxemics. What we're doing in VR, AR, prepping, putting, combining, interceding code between these larger positions, these larger entities. This was a talk of essentialism, I know, which is a bad word in 21st century, but it's a look at what we can expect without the numbers without looking for the outlier position, a comparison of what we even ingest, what happens with the boots in the ground, what are you going to encounter with your own personal identity at 4 in the morning in various neighborhoods of New York. These are real things. These are real experiential forms. And they're unique inside the global cities of the earth. VR is, again, kind of a way of bringing down these whole series of 10 talks here, maybe the whole class, is a way of bringing silos down so that we can talk about what is the liminal relationship, even contingent, even abducted, abduced values between these entities in VR, AR, XR, mixed reality. We deal with engineering, retail, marketing, emergency, entertainment, or the arts, military, education, healthcare, industrial. These are all realms, all silos that have already come down in society. And that is it for our current discussion. See you next lecture.